Okay, great. So welcome everyone. What we're going to do is I have a slide presentation to guide us through everything, but this is going to be pretty interactive as well. I'll be kind of teaching and facilitating, but there will be times where I ask you to go ahead and type things in the chat. And I'll also see if I can make it work, I'll actually, you can unmute and we can do some back and forth as well that way. So welcome to the Impossible Summit, everyone. I don't know if you've attended other sessions, but it's such a great summit and it's full of change makers, people who are out to change the world. And the topic of this workshop is 3 keys to harnessing the power of virtual changemaker groups. And I am the founder of Lightworker Tech Tribe. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So the way this is going to work and the agenda for today is we're going to talk briefly about this wonderful moment in time. I say wonderful, a little tongue-in-cheek, but it is wonderful because it's bringing about so much positive change in the midst of all of the challenges. And we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also talk about why virtual groups. So if you're a change maker, why should you care about virtual groups? And then I'm going to lay out 3 keys to harnessing the power of virtual groups. The keys are actually applicable to regular groups like in-person groups as well, but they're especially critical for virtual groups. Then we're going to do an exercise where we go into Zoom breakout rooms and we're going to practice some of these 3 keys. Then we'll do a recap and I'll make some recommendations.
This session, this is not where your workshop is happening.
Hi, can everyone just go ahead and mute?
And the link to
Make sure you're on mute. Someone's troubleshooting. I know the sound of that very well. Okay, if you can bear with me 1 second, I'll do a mute all. 1 moment. All right, mute all. There we go. Now, I believe that you are still able to unmute yourselves. If you have any trouble and you send a chat, I should be able to see it. It should blink and I should be able to then unmute you, but I left it enabled for you to unmute yourselves. Okay, so this is about me, just so you know who I am. I know about half of you. And for those of you who aren't aware, my mother is on, Diana McDaniel. Hi, Mom. Thanks for being here. She is also a tech nerd, which is so hilarious. I don't know why I didn't realize this until recently, but I realized I really did inherit my tech stuff through her. And she's really a tech goddess in and of her own right. So I'm really glad she's here. And I'm the founder of Lightworker Tech Tribe, which is, we do digital marketing, online courses, lots of fun there. It's a learning community. We have a meetup group and so on. My background is 20 years of technology training, tech project management, and online marketing more recently. And I'm also a trained transformational facilitator, and I lead transformational women's circles. So I'm what you would call a light worker. I spread light. And I also call people who are change makers, people who are coaches, healers, creatives, chiropractors, wellness practitioners. All of those folks are my folks. And you're welcome here. Okay, so the moment we are in, before we jump into talking about virtual groups, I think it's really important to sort of ground ourselves in this moment of time. We have the global pandemic happening. We're seeing old ways disintegrating around us, right? Things are just kind of falling apart. It's not all bad, but it is a bit painful, and ways of governing, doing business, the way our economies run, everything is changing. We're in a massive moment of flux. And COVID is really showing us that the old ways of doing things, they're just not working. They don't work well for everyone. And it may seem impossible to create this new world, right? I'm hearkening to the theme of the summit, doing the impossible. It may seem impossible to create and birth new ways of doing things in this time, but it really is possible. And what will the new ways be? Well, we're in the process of creating what I would call a new earth. You know, a lot of people call it that, not my term. I just think it's where we are right now. And we're no longer, as part of this new world and new way of doing things, going to be doing everything on our own. We are really moving into an era where humanity is really getting that we don't have to do everything on our own. We can do things in groups. And so this is really bubbling to the surface. And since we're in, lockdown, quarantine, various stages of that, it's really virtual groups at this moment that are bubbling to the surface. So what are virtual groups, and why do we care? Um, I'm really passionate about the possibilities of virtual groups. And really any virtual group, a virtual group is really any group that meets virtually. So some examples are mastermind groups, team project groups, meetup groups that meet online, online classes. So just go ahead and post in the chat some of the things that you think would qualify. And again, in order to participate in the chat, you'll see a chat button at the bottom middle of your screen. If your host controls toolbar has disappeared, just kind of move your mouse around and you should see it. All right, so it looks like Corinne, you're doing a virtual salon right now. That's great, what a good idea, virtual salon. Women's circle, worship services, yep. Family gatherings, yeah, I hadn't thought about that one. Online mastermind, yep. Women's circle online groups. Oh yeah, Noah, that's good. Those are really good points. What WeChat, I hadn't even thought about half of these. TEDx, Rotary, oh yeah, TEDx, absolutely. Electoral, creative co-working, church services, yep, meetups, meeting with your family online. Online screening, interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't thought about that one either, but I have heard about that happening. Excellent. Workout exercises, I saw that one. Excellent. So great. So these are all examples of the ways that virtual groups are coming together in this moment in time. Certainly some of them existed before COVID, but as you can see, the impossible is already happening. We're already getting so creative about using technology to come together virtually. Online screenings, meetings with families, and like where people are having dinner together when they're in different households, right? But they're quarantining. So that creativity, right, of birthing what seemed maybe impossible a few months ago is really happening. So why virtual groups for changemakers? People like us who are passionate about our ideas and about solving things in new and creative ways. Well, I mean, as you know, geese fly 70% farther in a group than they would on their own, right? So that's significant. And if you don't know about the physics of it, the geese fly in formation in a V because the wind if I'm saying this correctly, it's like the wind, there's uplift. So in each goose, each one of the geese that's flying, right, they are uplifted and using less effort in their wings because of where they are in the V. And that's really all the extent I know of it. I just know that it's much easier for them to fly in a group, physically a lot less straining than if they were to fly on their own. And so it's the same thing for us. We can come together in groups and we have all these benefits. We have emotional support, which we need when we're like outside our comfort zone, changing the world. We have the amplified field of a group mind focus. If more than 2 or 3 people come together, there's an amplified field. And that's where you have more than one brains create, right? More than one brain. You've got 3 or 4 brains coming together, all of your heart, all of everything that you bring in order to create more ideas, more knowledge, etc. So you can have greater clarity on your actions. You can make faster progress. You can achieve your goals with more ease, instead of struggling on your own, etc. You can generate ideas, increase knowledge. And of course, every person brings their own network and resources, which you can then tap into when you're in a group. So when have you had a great experience in a virtual group? Go ahead and post in the chat, maybe a sentence or two about a really great experience that you had as part of a project team. Maybe it was your idea, maybe it was someone else's idea. Go ahead and post in the chat. A sense of play and connection globally. Ah, yeah, online gaming. I hadn't thought about that one. Ah, and the way geese change leadership. Yeah, they rotate in that front position. That's right. Disinfo for TEDx is globally during the shutdown. The group genius came up with a great idea none of us thought of on our own. Right. I know I've had some really great experiences with groups where I felt valued, like I felt valued. I felt that everyone was not in it just for themselves, but for the intention of the group and for each person's kind of growth and well-being within the group. That's when I've really enjoyed being in groups. And Noah says, going slow and authentic relating group where we would breathe together and go very slow. It allowed me to feel seen and it fed my soul. Yeah, I can really relate to that. I love groups that go at a nice, easy pace, and when you have breath work involved, it really amplifies the field as well. Training support, seen, valued, yep. Connecting in chorus community. Ah, singing community, even muted in community. Yeah. Accomplishing more together than you could on your own. Absolutely. I love being able to see folks I know when I can't visit right now. Yeah, that's a big one. I've been part of a women's leadership group for over a decade that has transformed my life, where we really connected and shared with each other. Yeah, I'm in that group with you, Adria, and I really get what you're saying. It's been a profound experience of coming together virtually and being so cohesive, and feeling so valued and so on. I know I'm oversimplifying, but I'm just saying I really hear you. Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So here's the thing, people get all excited about their ideas and they go out and find other people to rally around that idea. And, I've done this myself. I've been, rallied around an idea. I've rallied people around an idea. And then I charge off into the great wide world. We're excited. We schedule weekly meetings. We start a Google Doc. We're making this happen. And then, so many times the group falls apart, and it just doesn't work the way that you think it works when you have a group of people, well-meaning, wonderful people. So often the groups fall apart, right? I think we've probably all experienced that if we've gone after something or been inspired by someone and followed them. So why do groups fall apart? People think it's these reasons. Competition, groups coming together and people jockeying for position of power or leadership or somewhere on the pecking order within a group. People get their feelings hurt. People sometimes just disappear into the wind. Lack of funding, lack of organization, lack of accountability. These things do happen, and I'm wondering if something else might be missing. So go ahead and post in the chat maybe some experience. I don't mean to re-traumatize anyone, but if you can just post in the chat, what do you think happened there when you had things fall apart? What do you think was missing? Lack of shared agreements. Strong enough purpose. The purpose. That's a good one, Sasha. Yeah, yeah. Common direction. Yeah. When people are, it's kind of like herding cats, right? When people don't agree on the actual direction and intention. Yeah. Value missing. A team member was out of integrity and mad that someone else was accountable. Yeah, I get that. It's hard if the integrity of the group isn't first agreed upon and then held by every member. That really does kind of disintegrate the group. Trust, absolutely. No feedback process or process for collaborating with one another. Exactly. Yep. Feeling excited, but a tragedy of the commons. Nobody really took the lead and expected others to initiate. Yeah, I really hear that one. It's so hard if the rules have not been clearly defined and then what's expected from the rules. Right. Lack of connection. Not enough net benefit for all. Good. Yeah, these are all really great. And I think that they all happen when groups fall apart for sure. And what you'll notice too is that if you start to think about in-person groups versus virtual groups, all of these things are very important. They're already critical for in-person groups. But then when you move to working purely virtually, it becomes essential. Like you can't really fudge any of these things, right? And we'll talk about the actual 3 keys that I think encompass all, if not all of these things, most of them. But you can see that with virtual groups, without that sort of in-person cohesion that can occur, you have to really up your game by shoring up all of these things when you're working virtually. So really great. Breakdown of communication, people talking at each other instead of having a dialogue. Excellent, really great. Communication styles and the resulting kind of ego hurt feelings, right, that can happen, big deal. So the question is, what is really missing? Because I think that a lot of what you're saying definitely happens, and yet, what really is missing? What's really going to make the difference? So what I'm asserting today is that there are 3 keys to harness the power of virtual groups. And I think these 3 keys pretty much encompass the things that were brought up. And the source of this, I've been trained by Dr. Claire Zammit of Feminine Power. I'm in her facilitation certification program. And with permission, we get to go out and teach some of the things that she's teaching because she really wants to have her ideas out in the world, right? It's not so much about her, it's more about like changing the world. So what I've become so passionate about is how she has taught us about, number 1, a collaborative container, number 2, shared agreements, and number three is actually mine. I'm bringing in number 3 from my years of project management and leadership training outside of Feminine Power. And so we'll talk about that as well. So what is a collaborative container? What the heck am I talking about? So number 1, you got to create a collaborative container. And a container is really your culture. And what's so interesting is that when a group comes together, it's like this mini culture that you're creating. There's going to be a culture, even if there's like 4 people on the team, there's going to be a culture that's there. And the default culture that we all come with, for thousands of years is competition. If you really kind of look at it, the default that we kind of go through life with and bring to our group work, unintentionally mostly, is competition. Who's going to dominate and lead, right, is kind of the question we have when we go into a group. And some of us check out and we don't participate because we're not into competition, or we kind of see through it and hang back, but then we're not really giving all of ourselves to the group and the group doesn't flourish, right? So what we want to do is disrupt this. We want to interrupt this old thing, and we have that opportunity more than ever right now as our world is in flux so much. New values of collaboration are coming in. And what you really want to have is a culture of growth, like the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. If you've been exposed to that type of thinking, those types of ideologies, you want to have growth there. You would think you would just want to have collaboration, but you got to go a little deeper and have a whole set of agreements and all of that around growth. The growth container is created with shared intentions, right, that have been discussed and agreed upon, giving permission to one another for feedback and for dialogue, agreement to be 100% confidential. That's very helpful depending on the nature of the work. If it's not that sensitive, then you may or may not need the confidentiality piece, but it really does help in creating trust. And then agreement on communication. How are you going to communicate with each other? Someone brought up the point of like people getting angry and things falling apart, right? So it's very important to agree on how you're going to deliver communications and also how you're going to listen to those communications. So number 2, shared agreements. So this goes a little deeper into the idea of agreements and intentions. And you'll notice that in those examples where what we were talking about, where groups fall apart, I would assert that safety and trust were missing because people had different intentions. There wasn't enough cohesion around the parameters of operating within the group. And therefore, there wasn't enough safety and trust, right? And then the group can never become cohesive. Now, what's most important is that groups need safety and trust to reach their highest potential in creativity and performance. If you don't have those things, you're just never going to get there. You might have a nice project, but it might not be the most amazing, life-changing project it could have been. So some examples of shared agreements are you agree to be a great listener, or you agree to be non-judgmental, no solicitation or offers to other members, except maybe with certain parameters, or maybe on Fridays. I know of a very active Facebook group that offers people Fridays for them to be able to sell themselves, right? And so that's great. It works for everyone. And another example is to always give feedback with an intention for the growth and support of the other person, right? So you can use phrases inside of that intention, like, I wonder if, or I'm curious about, and really use nonviolent, very peaceful ways of communicating. Zero gossip or back channeling, not talking over one another, being generous with praise and recognition. So these are examples of shared agreements that have groups really work and are critical for virtual groups. So what are you beginning to see now? If you start to reflect on the things that didn't go so well in your projects, and in your the things that we were talking about, the ones that didn't go so well, go ahead and post in the chat what you're starting to see, if there anything new is starting to open up for you here. And while you're chatting, I have to open up the chat. There we go. Yeah, people talking about other members of the group outside of the group. You can feel the negative energy in the field. Yeah, that's a really great point. That is very subtle. And it's something a lot of people don't realize, that the amplified field of the group is affected by the people, whether they're meeting in that present moment or not. talking about others. Yeah, really good one. And I think, Ronit, that point that you made earlier of breakdown of communication, people talking at each other instead of having a dialogue, I think that one is a good one too, because it shows that there hasn't been an agreement about how to communicate for the most support and growth. And Adria says that there must also be an agreement that we will assume others have a good intent and be patient with one another. We might not always get it right. That's great. That's actually one I hadn't thought about. Really great. Assuming others have a good intent. And Sasha says being hierarchical when that isn't inherent in the group instead of oriented toward everyone in collaboration. Yeah, I think that's great. So far, no challenges. Great. So you can start to see that if you make this deeper commitment to having shared agreements in the beginning and really take the time to hash them out and come into agreement and alignment, and then it's very important that at every meeting at the beginning, you create the container of the meeting by going over those agreements briefly, and everyone kind of re-antes up, right? They re-agree. And that way you have a profound difference in the level of cohesion and the ability to then really soar with your group. I don't know why my clicker isn't doing it today. There we go. So number 3, organization. So organization, I'm borrowing here from the world of project management. What I did was I kind of thought, okay, well, really what do you need to have strong organization from the beginning? So, and let me say why that's important. You know, people kind of run for the hills when they see a mess, right? Like I know that I get invited to do things sometimes, you know, and participate with friends or people who I meet, and they invite me into their world to check out what they're up to. And sometimes what happens is, as I see that they have a great idea that is world changing, but there's no organization, you know, there's no sense of how to manage a group from week to week over time to have results happen. And so for me personally, then it's like, well, I don't want to invest my time and energy in a group like that, right? Because I know it's not going to have the results that we all want. So a few of the basics, just real basics of running projects and groups, is to have a central location for everything, something like Asana, Trello, Basecamp, or Google Docs. Any of those are just fantastic, but you have to have something. You've got to have like a weekly meeting, or maybe twice weekly or bi-weekly, whatever your cadence is going to be. You need to set that up from the very beginning, like so people have trust in a structure that's going to support all this creativity that's flowing. And then you want to have a script or an agenda or a structured document that people follow for every meeting. You know, there should not be any meetings where you show up and that is not in place, even if it's simple bullet points. Also, roles. I love the point made by someone earlier where people were unclear about intentions and roles, and everyone was waiting for others to initiate action. When everyone is confused about who's doing what, that's when you start to see people wait for other people to initiate action and start to then get discouraged with the amount of effort they're making and disappear, right? So from the beginning, you always do the roles from the beginning, who's doing what on this team in this group. And in a meeting, you would want to have someone who's a scribe, who's taking notes, and who's going to facilitate, right? Who's running the show? And the more you have clarity around those roles, again, the more trust and cohesion you're going to have for the longevity and the creativity of your team. Finally, a big one for me personally is beginning and end date. I don't want to get involved in something that doesn't have a defined timeline, because, if something doesn't have a defined timeline, then how are you going to get there? It's okay in some stages, of course, you're in the ideation stage, but that should probably be finite if you're going to have other people involved, right? Or on the other hand, everyone agrees that it's open-ended for now and everyone's on board with that, right? But it's not just this loosey-goosey nebulous thing. All right. So bonus keys, right? We've talked about the 3. Now, in terms of virtual, just purely virtual groups, here are some bonus keys for you. You want to have engaging visuals of some kind. If there's like a presentation or anything, it should be engaging and interesting. You want to keep people interested as best you can and not clicking to other screens. We all do it, right? But you just want to do your best to make it engaging visually. And then interactive. Involve the participants early and often. Have them interact with you and with each other as frequently as possible, depending on the size of the group. That's something that some people overlook. It's like, well, sure, you chatted with people and there was interactivity, but aren't you, and when I'm participating in stuff, I really like to talk to other people too. I like to get to know them. What are they doing? What new things can I learn from them? So some examples of being interactive are chatting, like we have today, the raise hands feature, all, like WebEx, Zoom, all those platforms, people can raise their hands, and then they all have breakout rooms, right? So breakout rooms are fantastic, and just be courageous and learn them, right? I know they're a little bit intimidating if you've never used them as a host, but it makes all the difference to have a breakout room session or section when you're working with groups. And mix it up. Use a variety of facilitation styles and activities. Don't talk for 20 minutes without asking for some kind of participation, like chatting or a show of hands or doing a poll, breakout room, something like that. And I know WebEx allows whiteboards. So like if somebody's in the group, is a participant and you're the host, I know that WebEx allows the participant to be on the whiteboard with you. You can use your laptop screen like a whiteboard, and it works on, I believe it works on tablets and phones too. It's pretty extraordinary because you can be doing a dialogue, a diagram, for example, on a whiteboard with people around the world, simultaneously, all on the screen. So that's a really neat example of mixing it up, and interactivity. So go ahead and post in the chat any other bonus keys like this or examples of these things that you'd like to share with other people that have really been successful or that you saw and really liked. Yeah, those are great comments. I think the meeting schedule is very important, even if you have to reschedule from time to time. That's great, yep, because you want to have a vision for where you're going. Having people engage regularly throughout, excellent. Defining a vocabulary together, that's a good one. I hadn't thought of that one. YouTube for a short 5-minute video for a class. Yeah, that's great. That's a great example of mixing it up and using different different teaching mediums for different types of learners. People are visual, audio, kinesthetic, and YouTube is a really great way not only to be more in the realm of entertainment and edutainment, right? But it's also great for multiple learning styles. Have things that are fun, uplifting periodically as part of the deal. Yep. I like using videos as well. Yes, short videos are great. I agree with all that. Oh, TED Talks. Yeah, that's a good one. Work with Indigenous people and saying prayers at beginning. Yeah, gets everyone calm and present. Yes, I think I do that a lot with meditation, and it really makes a huge difference. Yeah, you can use movement. Have people get up and move around. Evergreen mission statement. Yeah. Uh-huh. Revisiting that every single time. Yes to movement. Yes. I hadn't thought about movement. I tend to forget that one. That's such a really, really good point. I think movement is really overlooked as a way to engage on an interactive level. And it really helps the people who are kinesthetic. If you're thinking about, if you're a kinesthetic learner and you process information kinesthetically, and then you have to sit and look at a computer screen for a long period of time, that's very difficult if you don't learn by hearing or by visual. So that's a great point to involve movement for the kinesthetic aspect, right? So that the people who learn by movement are able to learn. Otherwise, it's really difficult for them. That's great. Yes to movement. Yeah. Concrete a poem on a Google Doc. Yep. Mm-hmm. Add humor. Yeah. Humor, please. Yes, please. Humor. I love that. Don't forget about that. Cartoons, memes, I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy, and I can't usually use the things that I think are funny, but it might be nice to find stand-up comedy even and like have that as a break. And if it underscores the point you're making as a group, great. I sometimes just include a funny video, even if it isn't directly related. Very good. Oh, that's great. Maybe I'll try that myself at some point. That's a good point. Okay, excellent. All great points. Thank you. So what we're going to do a breakout room. We're going to go into breakout rooms and we're going to practice some of these ideas. So you're going to go into a breakout room with 2 to 3 other people. You'll choose who's going to take a few notes. And when I say a few notes, I just mean a bullet point or two, nothing fancy. And you'll also choose who's going to be the timekeeper. So I'm going to send over some instructions in the group chat just to give you a little bit more to go on. But essentially, the whole purpose here is to practice being in a small group that's virtual and having a structure and some agreements, right? And then each person is going to get time for the group to focus on helping them solve a real life project issue, like a group issue, a project issue, a business issue, something like that. It could have to do with the topic today, or it could just be like a business or project issue in general. And then be ready to share when you get back, and make sure you have fun. I want this to be fun, right? No pressure. You can consider this like a sandbox. It's like a playground for us to practice some of these things and to get the value of being with your peers, right? And have a real life amplified field to support you with something. So I'm going to come out of the presentation real quickly here. And if you can bear with me 1 second. Looks like we have 12 people, and it takes a moment to go into the breakout rooms. We're going to have about 30 minutes. Okay, I say about because I'm going to extend it a little bit if I think we need a few more minutes. We're going until 3 o'clock, so we're going to have 30 minutes in the group. Each person will have 10 minutes, right, to be in the hot seat, right? We call it the love seat in the feminine power group. And each person will have, well, between 10 and 15 minutes. I'll let you manage that. The total chunk will be about 30 minutes, and we'll come back then and I'll kind of let you manage. You'll have to keep an eye on time. You'll have to move forward with velocity. Um, but just make sure that you're listening deeply. Be a better listener than talker. Use nonviolent communication, right? Okay. And if you have questions, as I'm doing the breakout rooms, I'll keep an eye on the chat. And again, more instructions will be coming. They'll be coming in the like a little message that pops up in your breakout room. So there's never been a more important time for you to lead groups and to shine. So thank you for being part of the people who are drawn to the Impossible Summit. I know that you all are out there doing the impossible, bringing this new world into being, and thank you for bringing your ideas to the world through virtual groups. Thank you everyone for attending.